Hi and welcome back to Cheeky Crypto. My name is Nick, and today guys we're going to be jumping down into the world of Vechain, taking a look at what's been going on most recently and what we would expect to happen next based on the price action. As I get into this video, you guys know what to do. Hit the like button, subscribe if you're new, and join us in Discord. Links are in the description below. Okay, let's get into it. Vechain paired up with USDT on the hourly chart. Binance is our data source. Okay, so if you want to replicate that, those are the settings you're going to require. Just taking a look at this recent price action of Vechain to the downside, we can see it's pretty significant. But it isn't overly clear within this structure as whether this is a 5-wave drop or just a 3-wave drop. Looking at it, we've got a lot of pretty impulsive structures taking us down lower. So let's try to dissect this down and see what is going on. From the lower side, we can see there's pretty obvious kind of moments of volatility, and we're bouncing around a little bit. From the upper side, we can see we've got some pretty clear drops, and there's a few areas of descending, kind of parallel channels, for example, breakouts, then breakdowns, and then the usual kind of stuff to the downside on this side. So we've got some pretty interesting options. Looking at this, I would say that this looks like the bottom of a wave, and then we have this little push to the upside. Very similar to this one here, but I think this is a bit deeper and a bit more realistic to take our expectations. So if we were to grab our fibs and we were to run this from this low level all the way to the upper side here, and we just transpose this over to this section right there, we can see that we clearly move past the 1.618, even by taking that lower target. So that's going to give us a good indication that maybe we are in some kind of 4th wave structure at the bottom here, with this being our little wave 2. Now, on that note, we should probably just do some quick checks. A wave 2 would typically be between 50 and 88%. We're actually a little bit short of that. So we could expect wave 2 to be deeper if wave 4 to be deeper if wave 2 was shallow. Okay, so there's going to be a couple of expectations there. Wave 4 would normally be 38.2% retracement of wave 3. So we'll have to keep a close eye on that as we kind of progress into this. So on that note, we can see that we've potentially got ourselves a 5-wave structural drop within here, bringing us back down 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay, then we have a slightly more kind of corrective structure here, probably as our actual wave 4 bounce, with that being the wave 2. So let's go ahead and draw these in. Okay, so I think we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 about here. Okay, so that's kind of wave 3 if you think about it nested. This basically being 1, 2. Right, all of that being wave 3, this being our wave 4, and we're looking for that downward price pressure. Okay, so essentially, if I remove those nested waves, you can then start to see that actually it just looks like a 5-wave structural drop. Although wave 2 is shallower than our expectations, these things can sometimes happen specifically with lower liquidity cryptocurrencies. Okay, so from this structure, we can see 5 clear definitive moves to the downside, whether we wanted to kind of acknowledge wave 1 or wave 3 or 4, 5, etc. But for the most part, it's looking kind of like a good structural move where we see impulsive moves coming down. Okay. So this has given us a bit of a steer as to what we would expect to happen next. Okay, let's jump down into the recent price action here for Vechain. Okay, and what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at this structure. We can see that this point is lower. So this is our high point here. We have a pretty interesting structure move inside here as well. That does not look like it's actually impulsive, but just 3 waves, probably a WXYXZ if we were to really break it down on like a 5-minute chart. But we won't do that. We'll just keep this pretty simple. Now, here we have a pretty clear drop coming in. Again, we could probably dissect that further if we wanted to. I'm not going to though. And then we can see here we've got a pretty clear 3-wave bounce. So most recently, if we grab this point here and we move this over to this section, you can see that we've wicked right up onto the 1-to-1 ratio. That's a pretty typical ABC kind of structure. Usually these are typically a 1-to-1, as in the A wave and the C waves are exactly the same size. So in this particular example, we would have a potential 3-wave move upwards, and we are going to be looking for downward price pressure. Now, for our 5th wave, if we take this low point and we take our high point just here, our expectations would be that we'd actually end up in this zone down here. And let me just draw this on. It's basically between 2.410 and 2.475. Okay, that's going to be the area that we're kind of looking for within our final 5th wave. Now, the scale of this, however, could be that we get an overextension here. And what I mean by an overextension is it breaks down into a very clear 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So we could be coming down a little bit deeper before we start bouncing up in any significant way. A little bit too soon to really know, because we could also be looking at this as an ending diagonal, and lots of other kind of structures that could kind of play out within this 5th wave. So we're going to keep a close eye on it, but our expectations are to come down towards the 2.410 and 2.475 before we start moving back up again. Now, when we take a look at the stochastic RSI here from the momentum point of view, we can see that we're overbought on the hourly. We can see that we're overbought on the 4 hourly. We can see that we're overbought on the 8-hourly chart as well. The daily is actually in a really good spot for a good bounce to the upside, and the weekly needs to come down. So we know that there's a lot of corrections that are going to have to happen here. Now, as we come down into a 30-minute chart, that also tells us we have to go down, and our 15 minutes is starting to correct down. So there's going to be a little bit of volatility here, but at some point soon, this market is probably going to start correcting. If not, by the time this video goes out, shortly after it, in my opinion. Now, from this Elliott wave theory point of view and this correction to the downside, this being a complete 5-wave structure at that point, we'll be looking for a significant move to the upside. And I say significant, we should be notable within a 3-wave structure. Now, if we take this low point down here and this high point as our anchor points, we're able to basically consider where this next move would go. I would expect 50% personally, but again, if it's a B-wave structure, that would be slightly more complicated or unpredictable in the way that it works. We'll be looking at maybe 2.857 on a kind of 50% level, but it could also retrace as high as our 88.2% under a wave 2 structure. That would put us at 3.254. Okay, so a good momentum to the upside to be had here. Now, from this bottom area just up to our 50% area, we're talking about 18%. And if we do go deeper, then we're talking maybe 35% to the upside. So there's definitely a case for the bulls here, but we do have to first of all move down before we can move on up. And the other thing we should probably mention is that although we have these great targets, this is still a 5-wave structured move to the downside, meaning that the move up is going to be a corrective structure, 3-wave structure, and we are probably going to have another 5-wave structure appear afterwards, meaning that we come back down and we reduce our prices even lower as we start to complete the minimum requirement of a zigzag. And a zigzag would just be an A wave down here, a B wave coming up, and a C wave coming down. Now, caveat, the higher that we get to the 88.2% retracement, the 3.254, this B wave here, if it was to come up as high as that, that's going to make it even easier to start trending down. And a trend to the downside will put us at a significant reduction in price. Okay, so there's a few things to kind of be caveating here from a larger scale. We'll talk about that as that time progresses. So I don't want to kind of confuse anyone with terms of what's going on the here and the now. But essentially, there's definitely some long-term bearish kind of scenarios that could be playing out, although there's definitely short-term bullish movements that we should be expecting after the micro bearish move down. Okay, we're looking for really small moves to the downside here. We're not talking much, talking 5, maybe even 10%, something to that effect, possibly more if we get an overextension. But there's definitely going to be a big bounce to the upside, in my opinion, that we should be thinking about. And then, of course, after that, we'll be back onto the bearish kind of sentiment. And I think that's really where the bears will take back control over the market. So, guys, I'm going to leave this video right there. A nice brief technical analysis on Vechain. If you have found it useful, informative, hit the like button. I do appreciate that. If you happen to be new to the channel, go ahead and subscribe. And until the next one, have a fantastic day.